And the plastic population, very appropriate, of course, on the Weather Show with me, Paul Hudson. Now, most of us humans enjoy the warm weather, but so do certain species who are harmful to us, and one of those is the tick, which can cause Lyme disease. And it seems conditions like Lyme disease are going to get worse because of climate change, and that's according to a huge study in America which looked at data from 568 counties and statistics from NOAA, the US equivalent of the Met Office. Now, researchers found that Lyme disease had risen sharply in the last 10 years and predicts that the number of cases in the United States will increase by about 21% by the middle of the century, simply because the climate's warming up. But what about this country? Well, I'm delighted to say with me now from our studio in Lincoln is Julia Knight from Lyme Disease UK. How are you, Julia?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
It's an absolute pleasure. It's a very interesting and quite worrying subject. So before we get onto the main subject, climate change could be increasing the amount of Lyme disease. Just tell us what Lyme disease is, what causes it, and what are the symptoms. Just give us an overview.
Okay, so Lyme disease is a bacterial infection. It's caused by, you get it by being bitten by an infected tick. Not all ticks are infected, so, it's not panic stations. But they give an infection caused by a bacteria called Borrelia, which is a corkscrew-shaped spirochetal bacteria. The symptoms... Some people, if you read any, if you go and read up about it, it will say people get a rash that looks like a bullseye. Now, that's the most obvious sign you've been infected. And that is, you should be diagnosed with Lyme disease straight away. No blood testing. That is diagnostic for Lyme disease. But however, not everybody gets the bullseye rash, and therein lies the problem.
Right, okay. Just tell us, what are the long-term symptoms of Lyme disease?
Right, so initially, even if you don't get the typical rash, most people will complain of things like fatigue, fevers, nausea, flu-like symptoms at the time of year that you wouldn't necessarily think you'd get flu. Bell's palsy, where your face drops down one side, can indicate. Headaches, a stiff neck is one that lots of people complain about. And if they haven't had a bullseye rash, if you go to your GP with some of those symptoms, it's not, and you haven't seen the tick, because not everybody sees a tick. They're so tiny. Some of them are smaller than a poppy seed. Okay,
quite worrying. I mean, we've seen a bit of sort of press about Lyme disease, and it's obviously a debilitating condition.
Absolutely.
that can last for much of your life. Now, I was under the understanding that it's areas like the New Forest where ticks are a problem. I mean, are ticks? Can you get bitten by a tick and get Lyme disease in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire?
Yes, you can.
Right.
Yes, you can. Ticks are now have been identified in every county in the UK by a very good organisation called the Big Tick Project. We used to think there were hotspots in the UK, which there are, and particularly the New Forest, the Southwest, Scotland, but they are now in every county, and people have also been bitten in urban parks, like Matt Dawson, the rugby player, bitten in a London park while training.
And where are ticks? So if I go walking on the North York Moors, the Lincolnshire Wolds, what sort of areas are there likely to be ticks?
Right, so the typical ones are like woodlands, heathland, but anywhere where there's long grass, they like to sit on the long grass and wait for somebody or something to brush by them.
Right.
And they're looking for a meal, okay?
So what you're saying is we shouldn't really walk through long grass with shorts and trainers on?
Not really, and so many people are not aware of that. So if you have to go in shorts and trainers, then make sure you put a repellent on.
Right.
But for instance...
What, like a mosquito repellent, something like that?
Yeah, because if you went if you went to an area where there was mosquitoes, we would all take precautions, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
But with ticks, it seems to be so many people, including myself 19 years ago when I was bitten, have no idea what a tick can do to you.
Well, thanks for now, Julia. Please stay with us. An absolutely fascinating subject about Lyme disease. We're just going to take a short break for some music. You yourself suffer from Lyme's disease.
Yeah, what happened to me? So it's a good example. I was a senior nurse at the time, so that says it all, does it?
Yeah.
I got bitten in Norfolk, in Thetford. I didn't see what bit me.
But you felt it. You felt you'd been bitten by something.
No, a tick bite is usually painless because what they use to bite, they sort of inject a little bit of anaesthetic into you.
Right.
So very often it's painless. But I just had an irritated area under my armpit. Completely ignored it. Completely ignored it. And it was irritated for a few weeks. Still ignored it. Didn't know anything about Lyme disease, despite my profession. And within about 6 weeks, I started to feel unwell, but nothing I could put my finger on. So I just sort of ploughed on. In October of that year, I completely collapsed at work. And within a few weeks, I was bedridden, unable to eat some days, unable to speak, only whisper, and I could only crawl to the toilet.
Goodness, it sounds terrible. And what was and did they determine it was Lyme disease fairly quickly in your case?
No.
No.
And that is very typical because, I couldn't... I did report that I'd been in a tick area. And after a lot of, shall we say, persuasion, at the time I got my GP to do a blood test, and it came back negative. I didn't know any better at the time. It is now known that the testing we use in the UK is not 100% reliable, and it can return a false negative.
Right.
So a negative test does not rule out Lyme disease. And it took me till 2016 to get diagnosed.
And what is the treatment?
Okay, so I'll say it in, commas, if you're a lucky one, you see the tick, you get a bullseye rash, you report it to your doctor's clued up on it. The new NICE guideline that was published this year, initially 3 weeks of one antibiotic, and if you're still symptomatic, another 3 weeks of antibiotics. So caught early, it is a easily, well, I say easily in brackets again, treatable disease. But left, it's a very insidious disease. It can affect your heart, like it did Matt Dawson, and he had to have heart surgery. It can affect your joints, so you get like an arthritis type illness, very painful joints. Or like me, it invaded the nervous system and attacks your brain and nervous system.
Goodness me, it sounds absolutely terrible. Obviously, this research that's come out of America that suggests a warming climate means that there will be more ticks. This is not good news, is it?
Not really. I mean, I'm no scientist. And whether that is going to happen, I can't say definitely, but I would say from my own experience of working in the support of people who think they might have been bitten or think they've got Lyme disease, we're now in November and we're still getting people coming to us from advice with new bites. Now, a winter bite isn't completely unheard of, but it's not as common as it, from April till, I don't know, October.
And of course, the weather at the moment is very mild.
Absolutely.
So that there's anecdotal evidence that the mild autumn we're having could well be leading to more tick bites. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, because it's been an absolutely fascinating chat, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And if this helps raise awareness of this debilitating disease, then that's excellent. But for now, thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
That's Julia Knight from Lyme Disease UK joining us from Lincoln. Coming up as we